I'm Andy Bojczuk, and I'm here with John Zelasko, and we're here for the IPA interview session. And this is another installment for this, and I've got Johnny Zelasko here, who's newly inducted 2024 IPA Hall of Fame. So congratulations again, Johnny. That's awesome.
Thank you, Andy.
Long time coming.
Well, thank you.
And so I guess we'll just start from the beginning. When and how did you begin playing polka music?
Well, my father had a band as I was growing up, and my earliest recollection is I went out to go see him play, and I don't know where the job was or what year it was or anything, but I remember seeing my father up on stage, and I wanted to be like my dad. I wanted to play accordion like my dad, and it looked like it was a lot of fun, and the people seemed to have a really good time, and that's what made me want to become a musician. So
yeah, with so many different genres out there, country, rock, blues. I mean, what made you pursue polka music as opposed to maybe another genre?
Growing up in the house that we grew up in, probably much like the house that you grew up in, polka music was prevalent, and the radio shows, and we listened to polka albums. And back in the day, we used to listen to just cassette tapes in the van, and it was always polka music. And I just fell in love with the sound. It was and as far as being exposed to other types of music, we were, but I always came back to polkas. We used to listen to John Denver quite a bit, country music, and John Denver. My whole family, we wore out a John Denver greatest hits cassette, and those are some great memories.
Okay. And I know, obviously, I know you enough where you listen to other genres, and some of your favorite artists might be that you'd be listening to besides polkas.
Billy Joel has always been one of my favorites.
Mine too.
And not only for the artist that he is, but for his songwriting ability. Mm-hmm. Just the way he writes and the way he can tell a story. And Sting was 10 Summoner's Tales has got to be one of my favorite albums of all time. Mm-hmm. I've been a huge Toto fan all my life. Mm-hmm. I love the band Toto. There have been it spreads across different genres. As far as being a country guy, there are certain country bands that I enjoy as well. I love the Eagles, but they were more country rock.
Yeah.
One of my favorite bands of all time, I've had the opportunity to go see recently, was a band called Sister Hazel. They're a band from the 90s. Mm-hmm. And Linda and I have gone 3 times to see them, and they're just an amazing band. Country rock, country-ish, and they're, again, the lyricist, Ken Block, is just amazing, mm-hmm. and I love his voice. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's spread across quite a few genres.
Okay. And first band, what was your first band? Was it a polka band that you got into?
Oh yeah,
okay.
I started playing with my father's band. I played my first job when I was 9.
Mm-hmm.
I have a picture of that. Of that job. I was about yay tall, and the accordion was probably almost as big as I was. But that was the Polka Cavaliers. That was my dad's band.
Okay.
It was I played my first job in, it would have been 1976.
Okay. And who was in the band at that time, I guess?
My dad's band, it started in 1963. Joe Piasecki and Mickey Konopka started the original Polka Cavaliers. The original members, I believe, were Danny Van Swaff. He played drums, and Dave Nareski played accordion. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if Bruce LaBelle joined the band right away or not, but I believe when Dave Nareski came out of the service, my dad went into the service. My dad was coming out of the service, and so my dad joined the band, and then Bruce LaBelle, I believe, was right around that same time where he joined. So they were 5-piece. They modeled their sound after the Michigan Polkatels, mm-hmm. which was a very popular band in the Detroit area. That band was the band that wrote John Chess, I think his last name was. He wrote and recorded Tatushu Waltz.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
and so that band was an incredible band, and they had the same instrumentation. They had trumpet, clarinet, and sax, and so my dad's band, Bruce played trumpet, Mickey played clarinet and sax, and so did Joe. He played clarinet and sax as well, and Joe sang in Polish, fluent Polish, an amazing musician, and just an amazing vocalist as well.
Yeah.
And then later on, my Danny Ventswaff left the band, and my Uncle Joe, my dad's brother, joined the band. And that was probably in the early 70s.
Okay.
And then I joined the band. I started with the band full-time when I was 10 years old. So,
Wow.
yeah.
That must have been amazing back then, especially being that young.
And to be able to stand next to my dad and play next to my dad all those years. And I still love coming home and just, even when we pull the accordions out, you've been at home.
There's something special about it.
Around the kitchen table, everybody's
absolutely.
sitting, and we pull the accordions out. We play Happy Birthday for everybody, and then we usually go through the repertoire and play the songs, and every time it's super special.
Yeah, awesome. So obviously you mentioned about your dad playing and the band and everything, but who else in the family, and I think I kind of know this, but who else in the family played an instrument growing up?
Okay, my mother, when she was in high school, she played the trombone. I ended up, actually my first instrument was drums. I was 5 years old. My parents bought me a set of drums, and I broke all the heads very quickly. And they were real drums. They were smaller, but they were real drums. And they're like, yeah, those drum heads are really expensive. So we taped them up, and after that, they just didn't sound the same. Right. So I moved over to the accordion. But my sisters both play. Michelle, your wife, she played. She started out on flute, and then into high school, and then she played a little bit of piano. And then in high school, she got into the drum line. So she was a snare drummer, and I don't know if she ever played bass drum or not, but I believe I remember her playing snare drum. Okay. And just a really, really talented musician. And then there was Cindy, who took it to another level. She actually graduated from the University of Michigan. She was a trombone player like my mom. And she's an amazing musician. She's an amazing piano player and organ player. She can sight read pretty much anything you throw in front of her. And she's extremely talented. And man, I wish I could do what she does. You know, to be able to just sight read as well as she does. But she taught music for many years, and then throughout the family, I mean. There were other family members too. Obviously, Uncle Joe, who played drums with my dad's band and everything. And it was a musical family.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, I remember Michelle telling me stories that so many times that you'd be getting the new Eddie Blazonczyk album, taking it in the bedroom.
Oh yeah. And
like hours upon hours, just practicing it over and over, and that it must have been just so cool to do.
It's funny because as far as I did my induction speech today, and basically it was a thank you to everyone who has ever given me the opportunity and helped me, and it was just I wanted to make sure that I didn't forget anybody. But to elaborate on that, as far as we were talking about locking myself in my bedroom, and not only did I play along to the albums, but after a while I would take my dad's boombox and I would record Eddie. Yeah. And I always stuck it in front of the rhythm section so that you could kind of hear the horns in the background. Yeah. But it was heavy rhythm because I wanted to capture that, and I wanted to see if I could duplicate that. Right. Try to copy and try to learn Richie's solos. Because Rich Tokarz was my childhood idol growing up. I mean, I had my father, but then when with Richie with Eddie was just and Darlak. And that was before I played concertina. So I'd get in there with Richie and I'd listen to what he would play. And my mom used to get so mad at me because back then it wasn't like you had auto repeat like you do on a computer now, where you could just repeat a part and it would just keep going over again. Yeah. I had to go click, 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 rewind, and then hit end. Yep. You hit the play and then you play the solo, and I messed it up, and I click, 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 click. And my mom would get so upset because she would hear the click, click, click. She'd walk in, open up the door, and say, "Would you stop it with that click, click, click?" So. I mean, those are childhood memories growing up, and I used to drive my sisters crazy. I drove my parents crazy, I'm sure. But my mom and dad, years later, they always said, we always knew where you were.
Yeah, exactly.
I wasn't out,
Yep.
spray painting cars or doing graffiti or doing vandalism. I that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
I love the music, and
You had a vision.
I had a vision, and I wanted, that's what I wanted to do, and that's what I tried to mimic. I tried to mimic those guys, and so I mean, Rich Tokars, and gosh, Jerry now, and Jerry Darlak and JT, they're all gone, and they're all icons.
Yeah. I think there's so many people that just value what they brought to the table and try to implement what they did.
I mean,
back in the
here
day.
we are, 40 years later, and we're still
talking about them.
And 50 years later, we're still talking.
Yeah.
And we always say, it's often, what do they say? Often duplicated? No, never duplicated. What is it? Often imitated.
Never duplicated.
Never duplicated.
Yep, exactly.
And for some reason, with that band,
Yeah.
it's just that sound, and with Lenny and Mike on horns and Lenny on clarinet, that band was my favorite.
Top notch.
Yep.
So, having said that, who would you say inspired you then in polka music, and maybe why?
Oh gosh, my father, obviously number one. Richie Sendra on accordion, Richie Tokars on accordion. Al Pietkowski later on. Al, I think Al's got to be one of the smoothest, most polished accordion players I've ever
Totally
heard.
agree, yeah.
And his shake is amazing. His approach
So
is amazing.
his shake is different than yours.
His shake.
Now, can you, it's a great shake. I love Al's shake, but I mean, can you?
I think that the major difference between Al's shake and mine, there could be so many nuances and so many. But Al tends to shake with no accent. Okay. So Al's more like da 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 da
steady,
like a steady shake.
Yeah.
And mine is more almost like remember when Scrubby would push on concertina? You had that da 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 da.
It's almost that third.
That third. It's a little accented. Okay. And that's what I grew up with in Detroit. I remember listening to the Dynastics, and if you listen to Mitch Kempinski, when he recorded with Dynastics, he had that da 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 da, and that was Ronnie too. Ronnie had da 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 da, and on box. Okay. Ronnie Marchishuk was the premier concertina player that I grew up with, and then the Furala brothers came. Yeah, and
whole new level.
Whole new level. I mean, Ronnie was phenomenal. Yeah. But Mike was one of my favorites, only because of his clean style and just his push was amazing. Jerry Darlak was another hero of mine.
So you mentioned, not to interrupt you, but you mentioned Paulie.
Oh, and then there's Paulie.
So how did, I mean, a lot of the solos and stuff that you came up with Paulie, and was that like really worked out? Who came up with them? Was it you? Was it Paul? Was it a combination?
We would work together, but a lot of times Paul would come up with something. Yeah. And he'd play it a couple of times, and I'd okay, I think this is it. And then I would come up with a harmony, and then
so are you seeing in your head, can I play that? Can I match that? There it is.
Yeah, and it would take me a little bit to figure it out, but he was one of, we were talking about earlier, 1 in a million, 1 in a billion. I mean, what a talent, and gone way too soon. Man, the years that we played together, and he was not only Paul. What he played was incredible, but his timing. Yeah, and his timing. He was such a strong player. His playing made me sound better. Okay, yeah, I could see that. I mean, I might have been a little bit off here and there, but he was so strong. He just pulled me with him. Got it. And then he pushed me too, because he would play stuff, and it's like, well, if I got to keep up with him, I got to up my game, right? And then Pete Darczynski was always one of my favorites, and out of all the guys that I've ever played with. There was just a chemistry between Pete and I, and he was just such a technician, and his timing was incredible, and we thought a lot alike. So like his turnarounds on things were very similar to the way that because he listened to Jerry Darlak and I listened to Richie Tokars. So when we got together, it was kind of magic. It really was.
Yeah, for sure. So. Having said that, and I mentioned at the banquet, 33 recordings, studio recordings.
Yeah.
What was the first one?
First recording I ever did, it was 1985. I was 18 years old. First studio recording, I played with the original Brass Connection. That was Rich Benkowski and Bobby Calvert and Frank Lischka, Brian Thompson, Mike Evon, and then Tony Kempinski was playing drums at the time.
Wow.
And so Tony and I traveled together from the Detroit area. We would go out and meet the guys in Youngstown, and we would go from there.
Okay.
And I was 18 years old, right out of high school.
Yeah, I mean, intimidating to say the least. I mean, mentioning the players.
Oh my gosh, are you kidding me? Absolutely. And to have that opportunity, and I just spoke with Rich on Friday. I saw him, and I haven't seen him in a couple of years. Or if I did, it was very briefly, but we actually had a chance to catch up, and I told him how grateful I was and everything. And he was an amazing mentor, and not only that, just an incredible concertina player as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think I also mentioned 18 bands that you played with, total 18 bands was it?
17 or 18, I think.
Okay, yeah, I think you said 18 in the bio. So out of those bands, what musician would you say that you played with the most, maybe?
The most, as far as, well, a couple guys come to mind. I mean, obviously my dad's band, I played with them from the time I was 10 until I moved out to Grand Rapids to play with Eddie in 93. I moved out at the end of 93 to play with Eddie. I started that year, actually, Prime Drive and Eddie were playing the same year, and that was Prime Drive's last year was 93. So Eddie allowed me to play with both bands, and then if there was like a crossover, because we were playing a lot of the same places anyway.
Okay.
If there was a crossover, if something didn't fit, Al Kitkowski would fill in for that weekend.
Yeah.
But
so was that kind of like the Eddie rule that if you're playing with one band, you're not playing with another?
Well, actually, there were times where I would play with both bands, but if we had to play at the same time, one job in particular was Wildwood.
Okay.
Because we were playing the lounge, we were playing the Oceanic Lounge across the street, and then Eddie was playing the actual hall. So we were playing at the same time, so obviously it couldn't be two places at once, so Al played for me. Okay. But there were a couple of times where Al filled in. I know my wedding weekend, Al actually filled in. That was in '94. Al, they played out in Baltimore, I think, that weekend out east, and that was my wedding weekend. So Al filled in quite a bit when I couldn't make it. But those 2 years were pretty incredible. But to get back to the original question, I mean, I would say my father's band. I played probably more jobs with my dad than anybody else. There are other guys that I've played in several bands with. Obviously, I played with Ed Chivitz. We did the Dynastics, and we did Prime Drive, that whole era. And then when the project started up, Eddie, the original clarinet sax guy was Matt Brzezinski. Yep. And Matt really didn't want to travel at the time and everything, and so I asked him, I said, is it okay if we bring Ed in? And he said, absolutely. So we brought Ed in, and then we started there, and we had the project for actually about 10 years together. Okay. But we didn't play very much. Yeah. We practiced, I think, a lot more than we played, but that was a real rush too, to be able to do that material again with a three-piece horn section, and the O Brothers on horns, and had Mikey Meduja on drums, and Nigel on bass, and of course Peter D. So
what a band!
But I probably my dad was. I played probably more jobs with anybody. I mean, those early years are kind of a blur.
Okay. And again, like so many recordings that you've had, studio recordings and everything, and maybe not even just studio recordings, but maybe live songs that you haven't recorded. What were like some of your favorite songs that maybe you played and just maybe left a lasting impression, or just loved playing? And
there are a handful of, there's so many good songs to play. I like the old Eddie B stuff, and we did so many together with the News, and re-recorded a lot of. We did Hanusha, which was one of my favorites. And
you kept saying, well, maybe it's too many, but there's so many good.
There's so many good ones.
Where do you stop?
Yeah. And
is there any too many? No, never.
No.
What
is I'll Give You a Kiss?
Yeah.
We started doing that. That was a great song. Yeah. One of my favorite songs that Eddie recorded, but what was actually written by Crew Brothers. Judy's polka.
Judy, yeah.
And that was written by the accordion player.
Tony Crew.
Tony Crew.
Yeah, Tony Krupski.
Tony Crew, who
Yeah.
just passed away a few years ago. What a talent. And
Yeah,
what an
absolutely.
accordion player.
Yeah.
And I love that band. One of my favorite albums is Yes, We Are All Brothers.
Okay, Michelle says the same thing. You guys used to listen to
We used to listen to that. It was on the back. We had both albums, but we recorded them on cassette, and I think we had Wide World of Polkas on one side, and we had Yes, We Are All Brothers on the other side.
Okay.
And we wore that tape out. I still have that tape
Yeah.
in my collection. It's, but yeah, it's Judy polka was one of my favorite, and I like the way they did it. But when Eddie recorded it and Lenny put his touch on it,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, the horn parts on that are just unbelievable.
Yeah.
And we tried to mimic those with the project, and when we recorded it, it was like we tried to get it as close to the original, just to pay homage to to Lenny, because it was just such a great arrangement. So,
and obviously a couple songs you wrote, Back on Track, which you played tonight.
Back on Track,
Played for
and
a couple polkas,
I've got to set the record straight, and I've told some people this. I co-wrote those songs.
Yeah.
I didn't write the song. I had the idea for the song. I think I wrote the chorus for Back on Track. I wrote the trumpet part, the riff for it, and I had the melody for it, but I had no verses, and I am not a lyricist. And basically, I went to Paul Fudala, and I said, Paul, this is the chorus I have. I said, this is the idea that I have, and we wanted to make it generic enough to where it could fall into like a relationship, like you broke up, but you played the field, like you went out and you
Tested
saw
the
what else
waters.
was, tested the waters,
Sure.
and you find out what else was out there, and it's like, well, you know what I had before was pretty good. Maybe we should work on that.
Sure.
But we talked about that, about a relationship, maybe a relationship with God, where you're in a relationship with God, and then you turn away from God, and then you come back to God, and it's like I want to go that way. And then the other thing, obviously, the big one was the Dynastics breaking up the first time, and then the Dynastics got back together, and that was like the premise of the song. The band's back on track. So Paul came up with two great verses, and so then we recorded that. That was recorded in 1989.
Wow.
So that's been quite
That's
a few years
crazy.
ago.
Yeah. What are some of your favorite places you played?
Oh gosh, Wildwood was always fun for a lot of reasons that I don't know if we want to go into. No, Wildwood. There was one story. In fact, Rich and I talked about that, where Tony and I drove all the way out to Youngstown, and they had a bus trip going out to Wildwood. This was the week after I graduated high school. I was 18 years old, and ended up, it was on a Saturday afternoon. We were playing Saturday evening. TBC was playing Saturday evening in the hall. And back then it was Lenny Gomulka and TBC had a joint cocktail reception. So we had a open bar and everything, and it was in one of the rooms in one of the hotels, and I was there, and I partook a little bit, and I had a little bit too much, and I ended up in a room with Peter D. And the late Bobby Bobin and the late Dave Brzezinski. Oh wow, two of our idols, two of my idols, and I got up to go to the bathroom, and the room was spinning, and I went back to the room, and I passed out, and they didn't think I was going to make the job. And I rallied. It wasn't pretty, but I rallied, and
this wasn't the one where you missed the whole night and woke up at like.
No. That was a year at Seven Springs. I didn't play that night. That was another night. That was Gene Swick, the late Gene Swick, and that was Long Island Iced Teas. But no, that I didn't miss the job. Rich Binkowski came in the room, saw me passed out on the bed. He picked me up like I was 10 pounds, because back then Richie was like, he was jacked. And Richie picked me up like I was nothing, and they threw me in a cold shower, and I sobered up. I tried to sober up, and went across the street. I was drinking warm Coca-Cola, I remember.
Oh, jeez.
and all the guys from the Versatones heard the story by then, and they were walking over, and Richie Tokars came over with Weasel, Ed Weasel Walensky, and they put a 55-gallon trash can next to me on the stage because they had heard that I was.
Knew.
They knew. And but it's funny because it was probably one of the most relaxing jobs, or the most relaxed jobs I ever played, because I wasn't thinking about anything. The solos just played. I wasn't nervous, and
so you got to do it more often.
So it's like, wow, maybe there's something to this drinking.
Tommy Wonderlick's got something.
Oh yeah, that was before I even knew Tommy.
Yeah, right. So what was maybe like a wacky or most memorable band story?
Oh my gosh, so many.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Well, that was one of them.
Yeah, for sure.
That was one of them. You know, at 18 years old, just overdoing it a little bit, a lot. A lot of news stories.
Yeah, we had some good ones.
We had some great times. Gosh, I'm trying to think of some of the better ones. I'm trying to think of some of the better ones that I can actually share.
Sure. Keep it clean.
But no, I would say the Wildwood one was interesting. But just I so many bands over the years, all the bands that I played with, and just all the laughs and the camaraderie and the brotherhood and the brothership and it's just it's been a great ride. It really has.
So for most of the bands, I'd say probably 18 or 17 of the bands that you played with, you were always a side guy, never a leader.
I was a leader of my own band for 1 year. The band was called the Motor City Brass.
Okay.
It was 1984. I had the band for 1 year. My next door neighbor, Tim Irving, who's my best friend growing up, he loved to come to polka stuff with us. He wasn't Polish.
Yeah.
He used to come to see Eddie B at Yakarina all the time. We would take him, and we would take him to the church festivals. He was my best friend. We hung out quite a few. Oh gosh, probably 10, 12 years. We were best friends, and so he learned how to play drums. His dad bought him a drum set and everything, and so he learned how to play drums. And it was I can't remember the trumpet player's name. We got him from a local high school, and he was a good player. And I charted everything for him out. His name, I think his name was John Gregel, if I remember correct. And then there was Bobby Sadowski, and Bobby was from Wyandotte, and concertina player, and he had a really nice voice. So we had a nice little 4-piece band, and our first job was Mount Carmel that year in 1984, and we broke up the following year. I think it would have been at the end of 83, and we broke up at the end of 84, towards the end of 84, August of 84. And the following year, I started with TBC. So. But that was my first band that I was a leader of, and I got the taste of it. And there was, and then
fast forward.
Fast forward with the project.
Yeah.
And
so
the project.
What would you say the difference is being a side guy as opposed to leader? Because I know we talked to Tommy Pacciano.
A lot more responsibility.
Absolutely.
I mean, making sure that the hotel rooms are booked, making sure that everybody's on time. Yeah. Just communication. Exactly. Make sure everybody's aware of what's going on. Obviously, you're dealing with promoters and getting paid, and so there's just a lot more responsibility. And we always say, especially with Tommy and I, always used to joke around Pacciano. I thought, I've seen your job and I don't want it.
I don't want it. Yeah, that's come up quite a bit. That could be a T-shirt.
Yeah, no kidding.
So what do you think sets you apart, I guess, in polka music? If there's anything.
Gosh. I mean, based on feedback that I've got from drummers, you mentioned it today, my bellow shake.
Absolutely.
And it's I don't know how to explain it.
I told Michelle, to me, it's like a speedboat on a smooth lake. I mean, usually the drummer sets the tempo, just locks it in, and then I think the accordion kind of follows where you set that.
You think so?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's so easy to play to. To me at least. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's as far as like what you've said, and from the feedback that I've got from other drummers, and especially drummers seem to. Robin Pegg and I, we had and it was cool with Robin too, because Robin plays accordion, so we just had this this like
Yeah.
telepathy between us.
There's so many videos, and you'll see them on YouTube today, that when you guys are playing and he'll do a lick and you do the same lick and match. And again, there's nothing like 3 seconds, 4 seconds on stage, but that's something you're going to remember.
Yeah.
Talk about for years to come. And it's just cool to see. You know?
And you know, a lot of that I got to give credit. When I joined the Dynastics, Tony Kempinski was very good at not just playing drums.
Mm-hmm.
He played a little bit of box. He played a little bit of trumpet, and for him, it was amazing for me to see how he played off of the other sections of the band. So if the horns had this intro part going into like a vocal, he would do something to match or enhance what they were doing.
Tony had great dynamics.
He had great dynamics. He was a very gifted musician, very special drummer, and he taught me a lot of that. It's not about just playing your part. It's about listening to what everybody else is doing and being heads up. Mm-hmm. And boy, being in the Dynastics, it was intense because you were always listening. It was like you had the radar going, and what are the horns doing? And if
not only as a musician, but as a fan. Listening in the audience and hearing all that going on.
And you know, people had said that the Dynastics were a musician's band.
Yeah, but I take that away.
I mean, and see, that's what I enjoy as well. I enjoy the intricate, the intricate parts and the time to come up with those. And Eddie Shevitz was always good at just weaving in and out of the horn section.
Yeah.
I mean, way back in the 70s when they first started, and their first album, Detroit Spirit of Polkas, is still one of my favorite albums.
Yeah.
And it holds up today.
Yeah, sure.
That band was just incredible, and the musicianship. But yeah, it's as far as setting myself apart, I mean, I've always enjoyed that. I always enjoyed working with really good drummers and finding the pocket. Vic Darzinski's another one that yourself. I mean, I don't want to leave anybody out. Kaz was really good. I mean, very straightforward and just a great pocket to shake to. Just a bunch of guys out there. And I could name probably 15 other guys that I just enjoy playing with.
Yeah.
So,
what would you say your greatest achievement in polkas could be throughout your career?
I'd have to say, I mean, this was probably the pinnacle. Being inducted in the Hall of Fame is I'm not even going to say it's a dream come true because I never thought, you know, it wasn't even on the horizon. When I got the call from Jackie, I was blown away. So to be even nominated or to have my name submitted was one thing, and to come back and have Jackie call me and say, you're going to be inducted, and I'm still trying to figure it out. I'm shaking my head.
Would you say you have any advice to new musicians that might be starting in polka music, might be up and coming, and might want to get into this business?
Just have fun with it. With the tools that we have on the internet now, I mean, we tend to borrow from other genres and everything. There's ChatGPT now, and write your own songs. Yeah. I mean, you look at guys out there that I mean, one of my favorites is Mike Costa. His ability to write. I always say Mike Costa is like the Billy Joel of polkas. Yeah. He is just such a good songwriter, and some of the Magitones Face the Music album is one of my top 10 albums.
Yeah. Very innovative.
When you play that album, when I played that album, I played the heck out of that album. Everybody in my family knew all the lyrics to all those songs. Yeah. And that says something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And you know, just his writing ability. I wish we had more people who would write the way that Mike writes, or just writing in general. Sure. And don't be afraid to try it. Right. I mean, you've written a handful of songs as well. I mean, and borrow from here and there, and listen to a song. In fact, it's funny because you listen to Billy Joel, and he talks about some of his songs, and he'd say, well, that song, I wrote that song because it reminded, I liked this other artist's song, and I liked the way that was. And so I took those ideas, that genre or that type of song,
Yeah.
and I made my own song, but it was based on that song. So,
Yeah.
you know, spend some time writing. Spend some time writing music, practice.
Yeah, we've talked about like concepts. Just come up with a concept and run with it.
And
right?
run with it, and collaborate with your bandmates.
Absolutely,
you know?
yeah.
And don't be afraid to ask guys.
There's no wrong song.
No, there isn't.
Yeah, I mean, come up with the words, and you never know what you're going to get. So,
Absolutely.
well, awesome. This is great. Yeah, just shooting the crap with you.
Well, hey, I tell you what. Thank you so much for you doing your presentation today, and for the interview, taking the time
And again, congratulations. Well deserved.
Well, thank
you.
you.
Yeah,
I
long
appreciate
overdue.
that. Well,
And yeah, it's about time. I'm glad to see it.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thanks for taking the time.
Yeah. So again, thank you again.
Thanks a lot.
See ya.
Bye-bye.